You're listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. You can hear the show live Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN and streaming at accesswdun.com. You can find all things Martha Zoller at marthazoller.com. It is the Martha Zoller Show, and Pastor Rod Hughey is here with me today. Rod,
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Look, of course, the biggest story that people are dealing with right now are it relates to the Senate race in Georgia. I think the Pennsylvania race has been pretty noisy, too, because it's got a lot of challenges, similar challenges with the Democrat candidate. More so than the Republican candidate. But we're not going to talk about that because we're not in Pennsylvania. But this week, the Daily Beast, which we got to be fair here, the Daily Beast is kind of like BuzzFeed. They print things. They're not providing any of the documentation that they say they have. They're keeping a lot of things secret. And it's really hard to check their story because they're keeping a lot of stuff back as far as receipts and things they're alleging and the name of the person who is alleging. But here's what we have from them. One, they're saying that a woman came forward and said that Herschel Walker paid for an abortion, and she provided what they called a get well card, a check from him that was not for the amount of the abortion. It was for some other amount, but it was a nominal amount more. The abortion was supposedly $525. The check from him was $700. I mean, so it's not like it was a payoff for something, and we're not sure because we can't examine the documents ourselves.
So as you know, it's not a direct pay.
It's not a direct pay. That's correct. So who knows what the money was for?
Right.
She now says she is also a woman that is the mother of one of his illegitimate children. But again, we don't know who she is, who that child is, any of that kind of stuff. Herschel Walker has denied it all and says he doesn't know who who they are talking about, any of that. So, I mean, we kind of expected this, but it has knocked him off of his game. He is having to explain this and talk about this. He put a statement out at 11:30 last night denying everything. And it's really kind of interesting because it doesn't make sense to me. And here's what doesn't make sense to me. All of this was before 2009, which is before the book and the interview and all of that. But we've already established she doesn't have a problem with having children out of wedlock. He has 2 or 3 children out of wedlock. Why ask this woman to get an abortion now? For me, that doesn't make sense. If he doesn't have a problem with having children out of wedlock, why wouldn't he have another child?
Well, I think there's 2 major things here. Well, it's more than that, but 2 major things that stands out to me. One, I think they made a mistake of going and making a statement, putting out a statement last night of saying it's okay to put out a statement, but when you deny something that happened that long ago, you're not sure of who they're talking about. You shouldn't have denied it. All you had to do was just say, look, I'm not sure who they're talking about. I need to know more information. I don't know. Because first of all, as athletes, as a man, period, we do things. And humans, we do things in our youth and this and that and the other, and you're not sure. You just can't totally be sure of what you may have said or done to hurt somebody in the past. So my thing is find out more information before you discredit everything. Secondly, why would he pay for an abortion or whatnot? Well, there's many reasons. When I say that, when you're Herschel Walker and you're one of the biggest stars in the world, not just Georgia, people think, hey, I'm going to get on the bandwagon. And if you made a mistake and you got a woman pregnant, I'm not saying it's right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm answering the question of why would you ask somebody to have an abortion, or why would you pay for it? Well, wouldn't it be cheaper if you're looking at it from that standpoint to pay $500, whatever dollars, $700, $800, whatever dollars for an abortion, or to pay $1 million+ and keep paying as you're a star in the NFL or wherever you go? That's one simple reason. Doesn't mean that it's right.
Well, and I think, too, we cannot deny the fact that they are coming after Herschel Walker, as we expected, in a way that you don't see very often. I mean, I could go through the list. Bill Clinton, lots of picadillos, as you like to call them. Didn't really affect him. Got coverage. I'm not saying it didn't get coverage, but it didn't tank his career.
Right.
You've had allegations against the current president. You have had allegations against the former president. Okay. There are lots of people that I can list off, and it's hard for me to say this, but it is
Speak truth, Martha.
What I am observing is those were a lot of white men in power that it didn't seem to impact their political career. And in this case, we've got two black men, and you've got a black man who's a Republican who they go after them even harder. Just ask J.C. Watts. Just ask other folks that are black male Republicans. It seems to be a little racial divide here.
Well, I'm gonna go a step further. That you as a Republican, I definitely understand may not. It doesn't matter. You have two black men, and they both of them. It's been talked about or said at some point about their relationships with their wives or ex-wives or the lack of or whatever, and things they've supposed to have done. And you're right, Martha. I appreciate you. This is the fact. This is the thing that people don't know about you. Truth is one thing that you stand on. A lot of people don't know that about you, Martha. They think you just like a lot of other people that just, if it doesn't fit, your profile of what you want, you'll go a different way. No, you'll stand on the truth. You're going to voice your opinion of what you believe, but you're going to stand on the truth, and I appreciate that. So when you stop and think about this, yeah, these two black men, they're being ridiculed and barbecued pretty good. And it's, you can't help but to wonder, wow, would this have happened to others? It did not happen as bad. They didn't go as deep. And others have had worse records. So let's be true about that. But politics, I'm finding out, is cutthroat. I don't care who the candidate is.
Well, and we crossed some lines here a number of years ago. We used to not bring people's families into it. We used to not bring, those kinds of things into it. And in the social media world that we live in today, everything's there. And in fairness, you can't talk about this story and not talk about just kind of the way Christian Walker has been reacting and getting a platform. And what the response from Herschel Walker has been, I love my son, and not to comment on anything he said. And I think that's smart, okay, because he wants to have a long-term relationship with his son. But you can hear a lot of pain. What you hear is him defending his mom.
Right. And he should.
And that this was the worst times in his parents' marriage was at a time when he was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. In which he could surely remembers.
Well, yeah, it definitely has an impact. But here's the thing. After the election is over, win or lose, guess what? They're going to have to deal with this because now it's come out publicly. Without social media years ago, you didn't have to worry about it coming out public. It probably came out in the community. It probably came out with their family, whatever. But now all it takes is a couple thumb clicks or however you text, and it's the whole world looks at it.
So here's the deal. I don't know if this Daily Beast article is accurate. In general, the Daily Beast is more like a blog where they don't have the same standards of proof that someplace like the New York Times, the Washington Post, even the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. So that's one concern that I have. Secondly, what do I think is going to happen? And, I was talking to Greg Bluestein, one of the political insiders this morning, and one of the things I said to him is that I am hearing from folks. I'm getting phone calls. I'm getting people saying to me on this program and personally, I'm got some pause here. I don't know if I can go this far. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave it blank or if I'm just going to hold my nose and vote for Herschel Walker. This is from Republicans. So, but I do think ultimately what's going to happen is they're going to vote based on their pocketbook. And that Republicans are going to vote for Herschel Walker and Democrats are going to vote for Raphael Warnock. And we don't know what the people in the middle are going to do. And we're looking more and more like there might be a runoff.
That's a fair assumption.
Because there hasn't been there's been one poll where Raphael Warnock has been at 50%. There's not been any other poll. Usually in data world, if you have 20 polls and they're all kind of in the same range except for one, you call that the outlier. And then you throw that one out, and then you average the rest of them. Now, if you have 3 or 4 in a row that start showing that outlier number, well, then that's a trend.
Gotcha.
So you have to kind of look at the data. And again, the only data that matters is when you actually go and vote.
Gotcha.
That's the only thing that matters.
Well, I think you kind of described it or defined it pretty well, because when you stop and think about it, Republicans going to do what they do. Democrats going to do what they do. But what helps win elections is a lot of people in the middle, and you're not sure which way they're going. And right now, I don't know. I think we're in a time where people look at the fact of what you've done in your past as your past. It's what have you done for me lately. That's how I feel like people look at it now, because a lot of the people we're talking about are young people, which say, look, he's human. I've done what I've done. So they vote the way they want to vote anyway. So this is going to be very interesting.
I think ultimately the social issues are not going to outweigh the pocketbook issues.
I don't either.
I could be wrong.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show. And, of course, obviously the big issue today that we're talking about is Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is running for the United States Senate. He won, convincingly in the Republican primary. He has had a very checkered past, which he wrote about himself in a book called Breaking Free. He sat down and did interviews with his ex-wife where they clearly are friends and do well. Yesterday, his son had just had enough and went on Twitter. Now, there is an audio that's about 2 minutes long that he's recorded today and put on that I'm going to finish listening to, because I don't want to play it without knowing whether he's cursing in it or not. And we're going to see, and we may play that for you in the next segment so you can hear Christian Walker in his own words about his concerns about his father. I think it's going to be a big challenge for Herschel Walker to answer this. And this is going to be the defining moment in his campaign. How does he handle this particular situation? Let's go to the phones now and talk to Track in Rabun County. Hey, Track, how you doing?
All right. How you doing, Miss Martha?
I'm great. Good to talk to you.
Yeah. Miss Martha, I was on my way home. I had to go out this morning and listen to you. And y'all, the subject of libertarian came up. All of my friends who know me and know me well know that in my speech and in my writings, anytime that I use one or two words, libertarian or Scientologist, I always preface it with the adjective screwball, which is most fitting for both of these groups. And you will never meet a libertarian who doesn't think that he is morally and intellectually superior to every other being on the planet. They can't win elections, but they think they can force a runoff and maybe look up and get an election. And this is why they enter. Thanks to a screwball libertarian named Shane Hazel, we got 2 senators instead of 1. And people go out and waste their vote on the libertarian label, and you're just throwing your vote away, and you're voting for nutbags to begin with.
You know, I don't completely agree with that assessment. However, it is true that the libertarian can force a runoff. I think that they overpull, though, don't you? I mean, this business that people are 5 or 6% libertarian, I just don't think that that's borne out by the facts. The facts are usually it's roughly around 1.45%, maybe 2% of people that vote libertarian.
Yeah, well, you can always count on the Georgia electorate to do something stupid every 4 years, or every few years, to come out of nowhere and do something that's totally illogical. And voting for libertarians is illogical. It's a dumb move.
Track. But you know what I love?
They want that.
What I love about you is you just tell it as you see it. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, I always do.
You always do.
Why lie about it?
You always do, but you're pleasant about it. You know what I mean? You are not, there's not a drip of negativity in your voice. You're just saying what you think.
Stating facts. There's no negativity in your voice when you state facts. When you just tell something like it is, that's it. You know, it just irritates me that we have these two senators we got, and then the Georgia electorate can always do something stupid, you know. And which is why I'm surprised they elected my friend Brian Kemp, you know, and going to do it again. Because Brian, I'll be 84 next month. I mean, this month. But that's only 12 in dog years, and I don't worry about it. But Brian's the best. He's the best governor we've had during my lifetime. And
he's done a really great job, hasn't he? He really has. He really has.
It's a reflection of Brian's character. That's just the kind of person he is. He's a good man.
Absolutely. Track, thanks for your call today. Appreciate it very much. You know, Brian Kemp has really done exactly what he said he was going to do. And I judge a lot of, and this is what Democrats are really worried about, is that there are Democrats out there that are saying, you know what? I don't agree with everything he's done, but my life is better in Georgia because of the decisions that he's made. And I think he's tried to help everybody. And they don't like to hear that because that means they're going to lose some of their D votes. And Stacey Abrams, which, you know, Stacey Abrams got to love this controversy around Herschel Walker because it takes all of the onus away from her and the way her campaign is tanking at this moment. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Now, at the next break, I'm going to listen to the rest of this audio so that I'll make sure there's nothing in here you can't hear. But I do think that hearing Christian Walker in his own voice is not a bad thing to hear. And Herschel Walker needs to address this, not point by point, but he needs to go out there and fall on the sword. Say, yes, before I got help for my mental illness, I was a dog. I was not faithful to my wife. I caused the end of my marriage. I caused pain to my children. And I have asked forgiveness for it. And I am now doing this, and this to make sure this never happens again. That's what he needs to do. It would be so refreshing to have somebody just tell the truth, just like Track just did. Tell the truth about the kind of life he had. But that's my personal life, and I've dealt with my personal demons. And here's what I'm going to do if you elect me senator. Now, Raphael Warnock needs to do that too. Raphael Warnock needs to come out and say, you know, there are things in my life that I'm not happy about. My relationship with my children is very important to me, but I didn't do a very good job as a husband because clearly a marriage that lasts 3 years, somebody didn't do a very good job as a spouse. And if he's going to be a man about it, he ought to say it was him. I didn't do a very good job as a husband and a father, and I have asked forgiveness for that. Both of these men are running on a platform of being Christian men. Both of these men, Andrew Gillespie said, were like one was a lay pastor and one was a professional pastor. Well, Herschel Walker's made a lot of mistakes in the last, since he's been in this race. But I think that all in all, it all depends, and people don't want to hear this, it all depends on how well Brian Kemp does. If Brian Kemp wins by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the bigger he wins, the more likely it is that Herschel Walker wins. That is just the truth, folks. That is just the truth.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Okay, so here's what we're talking about. Christian Walker last night, who is the son of Herschel Walker, while Herschel Walker was defending himself on an allegation that he paid for an abortion for a woman in 2009, which he denies, Christian Walker began tweeting about his life with his father. Today, he has posted a roughly 2-minute video that I want to play for you now. I've listened to it. There's nothing inappropriate, but I think you hear the passion in his voice. I'm not taking his side. I'm saying I think you need to hear this because this is the most damning person making allegations against Herschel Walker. You can write off all kinds of people making allegations against whoever you like to support. But when the son, really the only legitimate son of Herschel Walker, makes this kind of statement, it's not only sad, but it needs to be addressed with more than just, I love my son. Because he is thrown, if he was not a candidate for United States Senate, I love my son would be enough. When you are asking the people of Georgia to vote for you, you got to do more than that. Here is Christian Walker in his own words.
I stayed silent as the atrocities committed against my mom were downplayed. I stayed silent when it came out that my father, Herschel Walker, had all these random kids across the country, none of whom he raised. And you know my favorite issue to talk about is father absence. Surprise, because it affected me. That's why I talk about it all the time, because it affected me. Family values, people. He has 4 kids, 4 different women, wasn't in the house raising one of them. He was out having sex with other women. Do you care about family values? I was silent, lie after lie after lie. The abortion card drops yesterday. It's literally his handwriting in the card. They say they have receipts, whatever. He gets on Twitter. He lies about it. Okay, I'm done. Done. Everything has been a lie. And so for the right to say I'm being suspicious for saying, hey, I'm done with the lies, when you all have been calling me saying, is this true about your dad? Gosh, we're not going to win Georgia, this candidate, all that's been you. You have no idea what I've been through in my life. You have no idea what me and my mom have survived. We could have ended this on day 1. We haven't. I haven't told any stories. I'm just saying don't lie. Don't lie on my mom. Don't lie on me. Don't lie on the lives you've destroyed and act like you're some moral family man. Y'all should care about that, conservatives. And then for people on the left to act as though I'm responsible for all of the things that he has done. I've talked about father absence. I've talked all these issues because they've been close to me, because they matter to me, because I went through it. That's why I've talked about it. So when you say, well, talk about your dad, but I'm saying this behavior is atrocious. Don't come for me. You don't have to like my politics. You don't have to like me. You don't have to. I'm just saying I'm done with the lies. We were told at the beginning of this, he was going to get ahead of his past, hold himself accountable, all of these different things, and that would have been fine. Go ahead. He didn't do any of that. Everything's been a lie. Everything's been downplayed. Everything's been cutting corners. The whole thing. And whose expense is that at? Me, my mom, as we're chased down by the media, we're terrorized, all these different things. People are questioning my authenticity. I'm done. Don't lie. Don't put this on me. This is a candidate issue, not a me issue. I wouldn't have spoken out if there weren't all these lies every day.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and that is Christian Walker. You can hear the passion in his voice. I believe he's telling the story from his perspective. I believe he's defending his mother. I think that seeing the repeated, because I guarantee you, I can't play Words with Friends or listen to a podcast about British history without ads with Cindy Grossman, that's her current name, Cindy Grossman's voice, coming on talking about Herschel Walker and what he did to her. So I guarantee you, Christian Walker's seeing all that and hearing all that too. And I'm sure it is bringing back up seeing his mother in pain like that. He is defending his mother. He is trying to defend. I think he had a decent relationship. It appeared he had a decent relationship with his father. But he's right. He's a young man, but he's right. Herschel Walker, we thought, was going to get out in front of all of this. And he still can. He did in the beginning. But I think he changed people working for him. And they were telling him, don't talk about it. I think you need to talk about it everywhere. You need to pull a John McCain, where if you are accused of something that is controversial, you dump every piece of information on the media that you have, and you answer every question to the point where they don't know what to ask you next because you have provided them with so much information. Don't hide. Get out there. And again, it sounds like I'm giving Herschel Walker a hard time, but that's because I want to win the Senate seat back. This Senate seat, I want to be held by a Republican. So I'm going to be hard on whoever the Republican is, as well as being hard on who the Democrat is. Because I think our values are better. I think that when Republicans vote like Republicans, the country is better. I think that when we have too many Democrats in office, they tank the economy, and then Republicans have to come in and fix it. I believe that. Now, I will tell you the exception to the rule, there's always an exception that proves the rule, is President Obama, when you look back on him, was much more of a capitalist than he let on in his speeches. You know, when he talks about God's gun and religion or whatever it was that he talked about. He said what he had to say to the progressive left, but when he governed in a way that, no, the economy didn't grow as much as it would have under a Republican because he's not a big capitalist. But he was enough of a capitalist that during that 8 years, it grew 1% a year. And it set the table for a real capitalist like Donald Trump. And I'm separate out all the things you hate about Donald Trump, but he was a capitalist, to be able to make the economy soar. And let me tell you something. If we had not had a strong economy going into COVID, we would have been in a real mess. We'd be like Europe right now and the problems they're dealing with. So, you know, there is a movement around the world of more conservative leaders being elected. And the Democrats want you to believe that that means that they're all a bunch of racists. But conservative does not mean racist. Republican does not mean racist. And we cannot allow, we have to push back as hard as we can on that. Because the mainstream media, and you're right, caller who told me don't call them the mainstream media, the traditional media is never going to give Republicans a fair shake. But here's my theory on that. When you talk about family values, when you talk about managing businesses, when you talk about the kinds of values that Republicans talk about, law and order, and you don't live up to that, you get treated a lot harsher than the Democrat who says defund the police and then violence gets worse. They don't get blamed as much for that because they're looking for less values, a lower bar, lower standards, live and let live, and Republicans run on more strict standards. Right or wrong, that's what they do. So when we stumble, when people get divorced, when people have problems, when we stumble, we get held accountable for it. That's what ultimately happens. So this is a tough thing. And I wanted to play that Christian Walker audio because you need to hear him talk about it. We will play in the next segment some more audio from Herschel that I found that from the interview last night with Hannity. I haven't seen the card. I haven't seen the signature. I haven't seen the copy of the check. Okay, because I don't think Daily Beast is a reputable group. It's kind of like when BuzzFeed put out the Steele dossier. Okay, I didn't trust that from the beginning, and we have found out that the Steele dossier was bupkis. That's my own word, bupkis. It means nothing. Okay? You've got to look at the source. Daily Beast is not a legitimate source. And you've got to make sure. The New York Post was, though, on Hunter Biden, and they had problems, too. You got to keep fighting for the truth.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Janelle King is here with me right now, and I first met Janelle when she was working on a project for the fair tax, and a lot has transpired since then, but she is one of my favorite people in politics. Thank you so much for being with us today, Janelle. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you. You're certainly one of my favorite as well.
That's right. It's always good. Okay, so let's get right to it. All right. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Senate race is challenging. I'm sitting here with a 500-page opposition research report on Raphael Warnock from 2020. Mm-hmm. There's been very little criticism of him, and there's a lot in this report. Okay. Herschel Walker, we knew, and a full disclosure, of course, your husband ran for Senate. I supported him. He, I think, would have been the best choice. But that's not the choice we got. And so what we've got is Herschel Walker. So what are your thoughts about what's transpired in the last 48 hours? And what does Herschel Walker need to do to be able to move forward?
Yeah, so we obviously expected to see an October surprise, right? I think that's normal. Everyone tries to come with that, and honestly, I believe that if this surprise had only been the article about the abortion, I'm thinking we could have navigated that a lot better because of the fact that the person was anonymous, and like I've said before, I'm just not a fan of anonymous, right? If you're going to come out and try to destroy someone's life, the very least you can do is show your face, okay? So that's number one. But I think the problem is it's Christian, right? When and not saying he's the problem, but when he comes in and almost corroborates the story, that's where people start getting a little nervous. And I'm not here to say that Christian's wrong or anything like that, because personally, when I listen to his videos, it sounds like he's coming from a place of genuine hurt. And
I said the same thing yesterday, Janelle. This is a young man in pain. You think about probably a lot of this stuff went down when he was 6, 7, 8 years old. And he's had a good relationship, it appears, with his father at times. But he's probably being hounded by the press along with his mom, and he sounded like a kid that was protecting his mother to me.
Well, so when I listened to the words that he was utilizing, I don't know. I think it is something that's a little more current. And the reason why I say that is because he specifically said that, we were told that you're going to get ahead of this and that you're going to take responsibility for it. And that's not what he feels he's seeing.
Right.
So that is the issue, and that is a very current issue. That leads me to what I think Walker can do, which is what I think we all are looking for. He's saying a lot about redemption. We believe in redemption. We believe in forgiveness. We are a party that is primarily made up of believers. So we don't have an issue with having a past. But what we want to hear is personal responsibility. This is not something you can just spin away. This is in your face. You have to attack it directly. And even when I heard him on Fox this morning, I'm not hearing personal responsibility. And I'm not speaking toward Republicans who understand the bigger picture and is going to vote regardless. I'm speaking to Republicans who are really questioning whether or not they're going to skip this race on the ballot. And the reason why we have to talk to those Republicans is because no matter what he does campaigning, if we lose support from the base, he will lose. And so when I speak to those Republicans, I'm wanting to make sure everyone understands two things. That, number one, morally, we have two candidates that have moral issues, and we know that. And you can't tell people not to see what they're seeing. And so that's number one. But at the end of the day, and I mentioned this on the Georgia game, and I keep saying this, the Senate is considered to me as a board of directors for the country. His goal is to vote in the best interest of the country. I have no confidence or not. He's shown that he's going to vote in the best interest of whatever his party wants or whatever he feels is the right thing to do based on whatever social issue of the day is. I need someone who will vote in a direction that I believe will get this country moving in the right space, in the right direction. So that's what this is really about. And so we have to stay there. But it is troublesome, and it makes it very difficult when we don't hear responsibility. And Martha, well, more than anyone else, you've seen how the Democrats respond to things like this. They like to drip attacks on us, right? Just like when we found out about the children. They told us about one when they know they had the other two in the back pocket. And then the next thing you know, we got another article and another article and another article.
Absolutely. And I think that one thing that I thought was interesting in looking at it is that first, the anonymous woman. Second, a receipt for an abortion. That doesn't make sense to me. Third, Daily Beast to me is no different than BuzzFeed leaking the Steele dossier. They're kind of a blog. They're not really a legitimate news source. But also, he had other illegitimate children. Why this woman was told to have an abortion? I just don't. And so there's some things that don't add up to the story.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
And I think that he could, I agree with you. He needs to take it on head on. He needs to, I think that full interview that they're using clips of, that they sat down and did in 2009, he needs to put it out there and point people to it so they can see that they were sitting on the couch together. They did this interview together, that it wasn't just, it was her telling her story, but also about how he tried to fix things. I think there are things that they could do that are out there because my husband called it, and I use my husband as my barometer of my voters because he doesn't care about this stuff except when he goes to vote. Because I care, it would be hard to live with two people like me. And he said he needs to fall on the sword. He needs to get out there and say, I was a dog, but now I've done this, and this, and I've straightened it out.
Absolutely. That's what I think as well. Getting there and saying, nope, all of this is untrue, when we know it is in some cases because you said it, you've written about it, is hard. That's hard for people to digest. So I definitely want to see that. But at the end of the day, I don't want people to lose sight of turnout. That is what's most important. Kelvin put out a statement, and he mentioned that. At the end of the day, if people don't show up, it's not going to just hurt Herschel. It's going to hurt all the down-ballot tickets. We have a governor's race. We have a labor race. We have a secretary of state. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Lieutenant Governor, AG, we need to make sure that we don't allow the distraction of one race to cause us to miss our responsibility or not take care of our responsibility when it comes to the other races. That is what we got to focus on too. And and it is going to come down to turnout. We got to be prepared that this is going to increase morale and momentum on the left. So their turnout may increase, which is another reason why we have to continue to build momentum and motivate people to turn out on our side.
Well, and where I think it is, I kind of look at it just a little bit differently, that I think the governor's race is going to drive this a lot more, where the better Brian Kemp does, the better Herschel Walker's going to do. I still think it's going to be a much tighter race. The Senate race is going to be a much tighter race, and it looks more and more like it's going to be a runoff. I hate to say that because I really don't want to do that again.
Not at all.
But it looks more and more like it could be a runoff. With all the money that's been spent, if you just look at it from 30,000 feet, all the money that's been spent against Herschel Walker, and he's still in the margin of error, because he has not had nearly the amount of money. I mean, with all due respect, former President Trump has not opened up his pocketbook to help Herschel Walker. And I think that's a problem.
I do too, but I can't say I'm surprised. I do think that's a whole different conversation that we have to have because, when you put so much energy behind putting people into the race and then you don't support them financially, it's sending a different message. And so I'm a little confused about that, but I can't say I'm confused about it, but I'll put it like this. I do think that is something that we need to pay attention to. Because he is struggling. I mean, most of the Republican candidates are struggling financially because that's just what happens, right? I mean, the Democrats they own the culture. So they have entertainers, athletes, and everybody else that's just throwing money at them. So we do have to be prepared for that. But like I said, I do think that we have to watch the momentum. I'm a little concerned that we are around 35 days out from the election, and I'm not feeling that hyper, we gotta go. I'm not feeling it. I'm really not feeling it on either side. So that gives me a little bit of comfort. but it does seem like the energy is a little low to be this close to Election Day.
Absolutely. Janelle, tell us what you're up to these days, other than, of course, us rotating on the Georgia Gang. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I launched a podcast called Let's Talk About It with Janelle King, and it's really my way of being able to flush out ideas. As you know, when we're doing media, we get about 30 seconds to a minute sometimes to express a big issue, right? And so my podcast allows me to kind of dig deeper. I have guests on some of them, and some of them is just me ranting about how I feel about things. But it's on every platform. You can also go to the podcastpark.com, which is part of Dickey Broadcasting, as 680 The Fan and The Morning Extra. You can also go there and watch and listen to it. Or you can go to Spotify or Apple or whatever you get your podcast. But it's called Let's Talk About It with Janelle King, and you can just follow me on social media. I post about every episode.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to talking with you again, and thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. You have a great day.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.